Chapter 1. Young Donald Trump. Donald Trump was born in New York. His birthday is the 14th of June, 1946. His father, Fred Trump, was a businessman who built houses. His mother, Mary Ann, was from Scotland. Donald had 4 brothers and sisters. Donald grew up in a big house in Queens. He was a very active boy. Sometimes he had problems at school because he wanted to be in charge. When he was 13, his parents sent him to a military school. It was a school with strict rules. He learned discipline there and became good at sports like football and baseball. He was also a good student. After military school, he went to college. First, Donald studied at Fordham University for 2 years. Then, he moved to Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. He studied business there because he wanted to make money. He learned about real estate. In 1968, he finished college. After college, Donald worked for his father's company, called the Trump Organization. His father was already successful. Donald started new projects, like building apartments and houses. He learned a lot about real estate business. Donald liked the challenge and wanted to make the company bigger and richer. Donald wanted to build famous buildings, not just houses. He looked for chances in Manhattan, the center of New York City. His first big project was the Grand Hyatt Hotel. It was a difficult project for a young businessman. He worked hard and made a deal to rebuild an old hotel. It was successful and made him known in New York. Donald had some early successes, but also some problems. The real estate business can change quickly. He learned to be careful with money and smart in business. He was confident and wanted to build great things. He wanted to be the best and had big plans for the future. He was starting his journey to become a famous businessman. Chapter 2. Building a big business. After his first projects, Donald Trump wanted to do more. He bought more land and buildings in New York City. He wanted to build bigger and better things and was not afraid to take risks. He worked very hard and built offices and shops, not just houses. He made places for people to live and work, changing old places into nice places. He wanted to build things people would remember. One very famous project was Trump Tower. It's a tall, shiny building in New York City with shops, offices, and apartments. Many people think it's beautiful. Trump Tower made Donald Trump famous. It showed he could build big, important things. People knew his name more. It became a symbol of his success and was even in movies and television shows. Donald Trump also started building casinos in Atlantic City. He wanted to make special, fancy casinos where people would have fun. He built big, expensive casinos with lights and games. He thought people would come if the place was exciting. He wanted to make a lot of money from casinos. Donald Trump wanted everyone to know his name. He put his name on many buildings to show quality and success. He also put his name on things like clothes and hotels. This is called branding. He wanted people to buy things with his name because they thought his name was special. He wanted his name to be everywhere so people would remember him. Donald Trump wrote a book called The Art of the Deal. It was about his business methods and how to be successful. Many people read it and it became popular. In the book, he said he was a very good businessman who always wins. He said hard work and smart thinking lead to success. The book made him even more famous, and people thought he was a great businessman. Donald Trump started to be on television and in newspapers more. He became very famous. People knew his face and name. He was good at talking to people and getting their attention. He used the media to become more famous, talking about himself and his success. He wanted to be in the news so people would remember him. This chapter shows how Donald Trump made his business bigger and became famous by building big things, putting his name on everything, and using the media. Chapter 3. Good Times and Bad Times. The 1990s were hard for Donald Trump. He had built many big buildings and had a lot of money, but things changed. The economy was not good, which hurt many businesses, including Trump's. His casinos in Atlantic City had problems. People were not spending much money, and Trump owed a lot of money. Some of his companies had to declare bankruptcy, which means they couldn't pay their debts. It was a difficult time. His personal life was also changing. He divorced Ivana Trump, which was big news. Then he married Marla Maples, and they had a child, but they also divorced later. These personal events were often in the news and made him even more famous. Even with problems, Trump didn't give up. He worked hard to fix his businesses. He made deals with banks to pay back money. He learned to be more careful and not take too many risks. It was a hard lesson, but he learned from it. Trump continued in real estate, building more and investing in other things. He put his name on buildings, making them famous. People knew Trump meant something big and special. He was good at branding. He also appeared more on television, on talk shows, and in the news. People liked watching him because he was interesting and confident. He became a celebrity, not just a businessman. Trump liked being famous because it helped his businesses. More people knew him, so more might buy or rent his buildings. He used his fame to his advantage. Even when things were hard, he stayed positive. He built real estate in New York and other places, always wanting the best and biggest. He built luxury buildings, symbols of wealth and success. He also invested in golf courses and other businesses, always looking for ways to make money. He recovered from the 1990s problems and became successful again because he was determined. During this time, his children grew up and started working in his businesses. They learned from him and became important in his company. They became famous too because of their father. Trump's life had ups and downs. He had great success and difficulty, but he kept going. He learned from mistakes and worked hard. He wanted to be the best. He always thought about making his businesses bigger and better and making himself look successful in public. He used the media to create this image. The 1990s were hard but important. He learned to be careful and overcome challenges. These lessons helped him later and made him a well-known person. His life was never boring. Chapter 4. The television show The Apprentice. After many years in business, Donald Trump did something new. He became a television star. In 2004, he started a television show called The Apprentice on NBC. People in the show tried to get a job with Donald Trump. Each week, they did tasks and tried to impress him. At the end of each show, Trump said, "You're fired," to one person. This became a famous line. The show was very popular, and many people watched. They wanted to see who would win and what Trump would say. Trump became more famous. People who didn't know his buildings knew him from television. He was on television every week, making his name even more famous. The Apprentice helped Trump's business too. He sold things with the Apprentice name, like books and games. He used "You're fired" on products. His brand became stronger. People bought things with his name because they knew him from television. His brand Trump became even bigger. He made money from buildings and now from television. The show changed how people saw Donald Trump. Before, he was just rich. Now he was a television star and a boss on television. He seemed smart and good at making decisions. Many people wanted to be like him, rich and successful. He became a role model, but some people didn't like the show. They said it was not real and just for entertainment, making Trump look better than he was. They thought the show wasn't real work and didn't help people who lost. Some didn't like how Trump acted, thinking he was too mean and "You're fired" was not nice. They thought he was too strict. Some people went on television and said Trump was not a good manager or a nice person. Even with these problems, The Apprentice was successful for many years. It made Donald Trump even more famous and rich. The show was important for his life and future plans. It showed he was not just a businessman, but also a media person with a big personality who liked television. The show was his next big success, making him known in almost every home in America. He became a big television star, and his business boomed. Chapter 5. Getting into politics. Donald Trump wasn't always a politician. For years, he was known as a businessman and television star. But he started talking about politics more. He shared his thoughts about the country, and people listened. Before running for president, he talked about it a few times, like testing to see if people liked the idea. Some thought it was interesting. Others thought he just wanted attention like a television personality. He had no political experience. Something that made people notice him was the birther movement. This group said President Barack Obama was not born in the U.S. and was not really American. Donald Trump talked about this too, asking questions about Obama's birthplace. This made many people angry, but also made some people support him. Donald Trump started sharing his political ideas more, talking about what he thought was good for America, like trade, jobs, and immigration. He spoke simply so everyone could understand. Some liked this honesty. Others thought politics was more complex than business. He gathered supporters who liked what he said. In 2015, he surprised many by saying he would run for president. He announced it in New York City. People watched on television, some laughing, some interested, some surprised. It was a big moment. No one knew if he could win. But his campaign started, and it was different from other politicians. He didn't have a traditional plan. He used social media a lot, especially Twitter, to talk directly to people. He said things that were funny, angry, and always got attention. He didn't have many advisors and did things his way, which was new and unpredictable. He held big rallies with enthusiastic crowds, like rock concerts for politics. This was the start of his surprising political journey. He was not a normal politician, and people were curious to see what would happen. Chapter 6. The 2016 election. 2016 was a big year for Donald Trump because he wanted to become president of the United States. First, he had to win the Republican primaries, like a small election before the main one. Many people wanted to be the Republican candidate. Trump talked about making America strong again and had big rallies. He was different from other candidates, speaking simply. Some liked him a lot, some didn't, but he got a lot of attention. Trump won the Republican primaries and became the Republican candidate for president. Now he had to run against the Democratic candidate, Hillary Clinton, a famous politician who had been First Lady and Secretary of State. It was a big fight because they were very different. The campaign was interesting. Both had supporters and people against them. Trump talked about bringing jobs back to America and building a wall on the border with Mexico, which was controversial. Clinton talked about equality and helping families, being more traditional. They argued in television debates, which were important for people to learn about each candidate. Sometimes they were very angry with each other. The media talked a lot about the election. Some media liked Trump, some liked Clinton. It was hard to know who to believe. Many thought Hillary Clinton would win, and news polls said she was ahead. But Trump had loyal supporters who believed he would make things better. Election day was in November. People voted. In the evening, results came in. At first, it was unclear, but then it looked like Trump was winning. Many were surprised. He won states expected to vote for Clinton. Trump won the election and would be the next president. This was a big shock. Some were happy, some sad, some confused. It was a big change in American politics, talked about worldwide. The world waited to see what President Trump would do. It was a surprising time, showing unexpected things can happen. Chapter 7. The first term as president. Donald Trump became president of the United States. It was a big change for him and the country. He moved to the White House. His first days were busy. He made quick changes called executive orders. Some people liked these changes, others didn't. One of his first things was talking about building a wall on the Mexico border, saying it was important for the USA. Many had different opinions. He also talked about trade and wanted to change trade agreements to help the USA. There were also problems and arguments. People protested. Some supported the president, others didn't. News talked about the president a lot, with good and bad stories. He worked with Congress, who make laws. Sometimes they agreed with him, sometimes not, making it hard to get things done. There were also world problems, and he made decisions about them, meeting with leaders from other countries. He chose new judges, including Supreme Court judges, who were very important for laws. People had strong feelings about these choices too. Midterm elections happened halfway through his term, changing Congress a little. It became harder for him to get things done because he had to work with people with different ideas. News continued to talk about him. He traveled and talked to people, still using social media to communicate directly. His first term had new laws, judges, challenges, arguments, and different opinions. It was a busy time. Some thought he was doing great. Others thought he made mistakes. It was a time of big changes and discussions. The world watched to see what would happen next. Chapter 8. The 2020 Election and Results. 2020 was a big year for everyone, including Donald Trump. He wanted to stay president and started his 2020 election campaign. His opponent was Joe Biden, an experienced politician. The campaign was very intense. A big problem was the COVID-19 pandemic, a new virus that made many sick. People lost jobs and stayed home. It changed lives in the election. Big rallies weren't possible, and people wore masks. The economy was bad, and many worried. The election was in November. People voted in person and by mail. Joe Biden got more votes than Donald Trump. But Trump said the election was unfair, with voter fraud and stolen votes. Many believed him and were angry, protesting. Trump tried to fight the results in court, but he didn't win. Court said the election was fair, but many still believed it was not. On the 6th of January, 2021, there was a big event in Washington, D.C. Trump had a rally and told supporters to go to the Capitol building where politicians were counting votes. Many went to the Capitol, angry, and went inside. It was chaotic with fighting and damage, a very important day in history. After this, it was clear Joe Biden would be president. On the 20th of January 2021, Biden became president. Trump left the White House and moved to Florida, ending his presidency. People had strong feelings about this election. Some happy about Biden, others sad about Trump. It was a difficult time for the country, divided. Even after leaving, Trump was still important, talking about the election and having many supporters. The 2020 election was important in American history, showing how divided the country was and impacting its future. Chapter 9. Back to the White House again. After leaving the White House in 2021, Donald Trump stayed in politics. He talked about the 2020 election being unfair and helped other Republicans. In 2022, he said he would run for president again in 2024, which surprised many. During his 2024 campaign, Trump faced problems, including 2 attempted attacks in Pennsylvania and Florida. The campaign was long and hard. Trump talked about changes he wanted, like trade changes and making America strong again. He gained support and won Republican primaries, becoming the Republican candidate with J.D. Vance as his vice president. The main opponent was Kamala Harris from the Democratic Party, as Joe Biden didn't run again. The election was on the 5th of November, 2024, and it was close, but Donald Trump won, getting 312 Electoral College votes to Harris's 226. He got over 77 million votes total. He became the second president with 2 non-consecutive terms. On the 20th of January, 2025, Donald Trump became president again. Many watched his inauguration. He talked about his plans for the next 4 years and quickly made new rules called executive orders, which don't need Congress approval. He changed many things quickly. One of his first actions was stopping a ban on TikTok, a popular video app. He delayed it for 75 days to make a deal to keep TikTok working while protecting security. He said companies could support TikTok. This allowed TikTok to work in the U.S. again. This was surprising because he had tried to ban it before, but he changed his mind, joined TikTok in his campaign, and said it helped him with young voters. TikTok's CEO thanked Trump. Trump said TikTok is back and called it a win for free speech. He also changed environmental rules, stopping climate change efforts and wanting to use more oil and gas, which worried many. On his first day, he stopped the U.S. from being part of the Paris Climate Agreement. Other countries had mixed reactions to Trump's return. Some leaders were happy to work with him, while some European leaders were worried about his climate and World Health Organization decisions. Trump also put tariffs on goods from countries like China to help American companies. Many Americans were either very happy or very upset about being president again. It was a time of big changes in the U.S. and the world. Chapter 10. Looking back at his life. Donald Trump's life has been very interesting. He started in business, building Trump Tower. He was on television, and many watched him. Then he became president for 2 terms. As president, he made new laws that some liked and some disliked. He changed some things in America and made people think about politics differently. He made many people interested in politics. Some think he was a good leader, others don't. It's hard to know his legacy yet, how people will remember him in the future. Some think his business skills helped him become president. Others say his television fame made him popular. He is still talked about after being president and has a lot of influence. He still makes people think and talk about him. We don't know what he'll do next, but his life is a big story of business, television, and politics. People will think and talk about his life for a long time. His story is a big part of recent U.S. history.
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.